You can now subscribe and save 20% off with a Strava Craft Coffee subscription. That's right. Every single time you use that Strava Craft Coffee subscription, you'll save 20% off. And you won't have to think about it. You won't have to put in your credit card info. You won't have to do anything. All you have to do is change when you want it to be sent to your door. Choose when you want it to be sent to your door. You can choose 2, 3, 4, 6, or 8 weeks. You can say you want 1 bag, 2 bags, however you like to do it. And then you'll have your coffee sitting ready for you on your doorstep when you need it, or right in the pantry where you need it. So check them out, Strava Craft Coffee, and subscribe to save 20% every time. Or if you just want to try it out once, you can use the code DNVR20 to save 20% on your first time, and then get signed up for a subscription later. Check them out, Strava Craft Coffee.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. 2 goes out to Zach, Mace, RK, and the bar. 3 for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number 4 we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, a mile high, Broncos win his odds. A couple with a breakfast crew and a friend bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us at the DNVR. We are DNVR.
Welcome in to the DNVR Broncos Podcast presented by MSU Denver Online. Guys, use the code DNVR Sports when you're applying to MSU Denver, and you will have your application fees waived. Everyone knows the application fees are kind of the most annoying part of applying to any school. So when you use the code DNVR Sports, show them you're a member of the DNVR family. They'll just take them right off and waive them. msudenver.edu/online is where you can go scope out all they have to offer. 70 or 40 plus online and hybrid programs, 750 total classes. There's something for everyone at MSU Denver. And again, use the code DNVR Sports when signing up, and you will have your application fees waived.
My boys, what's going on? Happy Monday, man. What a weekend of playoffs it was.
Yes, it was one hell of a weekend. A great betting weekend for your boy. I don't know if you guys caught much of the big betting bonanza that we threw on Saturday, but I was the champion per se if it was a competition, even though I had specifically said it wasn't a competition. Yeah, everything's a competition for me. But
so after the fact, you said it wasn't a competition before, but now you're declaring victory. So
yeah, exactly. That's the type of thing that I've been known to do.
This is how my daughter operates. It's a legit game when she wins. If not, it's like, oh well, we weren't really playing.
Yeah.
No, Dad, we weren't playing.
Honestly, though, it wasn't a competition of me versus the rest of the DNVR guys that were hanging out. It was all of us versus DraftKings, and we won by a lot. So we'll take that. It was a great weekend, and last night we got an interesting, cherry on top of the weekend. Just a week ago, guys, when odds came out for Deshaun Watson's next home, the Broncos weren't even on the first list that I saw. And I actually, I don't know, do you guys get the emails, just like several emails from different places giving you odds on whatever the topic of the day might be?
Right. And of course, now it's Deshaun.
Right. Well, I actually responded to that email being like, can you provide any insight as to why the Broncos aren't on this? Never got a response. But the one thing that has changed between the first odds I saw and the odds I saw last night are the Broncos got a new general manager. So I don't know exactly what changed in the eyes of those setting these odds, but I put it out from sportsbetting.com, and it was Broncos with the 4th best odds at 5-1 to land Deshaun Watson behind the Jets, Dolphins, and does anyone remember what the third team was? I can look it up.
Were the Bears in there?
I think you might be right on that. Jets, Dolphins, Bears at 4-1, and then the Broncos. What do you guys think?
Well, I'm amazed at the odds there. I'm not necessarily amazed that the odds are the Broncos are the 5th team, but 5-1. I mean, a 20%. I thought you said it was 5-1. It's 4-1.
No, it's 5-1, but they're the 4th team.
Right, yeah, but a 20% chance that's what Vegas is telling you. That's what's crazy. That opens my eyes to holy cow. And of course, man, just the way that went this weekend. Where are the Texans on that list, Ryan?
They aren't on the list, so I believe it's odds if it's not Houston. Like if he stays in Houston, it's no bet.
Okay, well then that probably makes the odds would be a little less than 20% for the Broncos if in fact Deshaun, if Texas was an option too. But it really seems like things are crumbling apart with Deshaun having any hope of staying in Texas, and that's good for him because he doesn't want any hope of staying in Texas. It seems like.
Yeah, the reports have just kind of boiled from different sources around the NFL. But, the one sticks out to me is from Adam Schefter, who basically said, like, there's growing belief that he's played his last down in Houston.
Within the organization, there's growing belief.
And they've started to explore what a trade would look like. And once it reaches this point, it rarely goes back the other way. Now, maybe they, try to hire Eric Bieniemy to appease him, although it's starting to seem like no one wants that job. And I don't know if Eric Bieniemy is going to, change. He hasn't even decided if he wants to accept the interview yet. So that doesn't seem like a way out for them. Maybe they come to their senses and get rid of Jack Easterby. And maybe that helps things. That doesn't sound like it's going to happen. To me, I rarely would believe that a 25-year-old franchise quarterback, top 5, top 6, wherever you want to put him, would actually become available. And at this point, it almost seems like a foregone conclusion.
Well, think about this. I mean, let's look at other trades at other positions. Jamal Adams to Seattle. What did the Seahawks give up to get Jamal Adams?
2 firsts. Exactly.
Jalen Ramsey was what? That was a first and a couple other picks, I believe.
I think it was 2 firsts.
2 firsts. Okay. If they're worth 2 first-round picks, what is Deshaun Watson worth? And if by chance he's on the market, then what could the Texans reasonably demand? If Jamal Adams and Jalen Ramsey get you 2 firsts, shouldn't an elite quarterback who has far more impact on the overall game? I mean, we've talked about 3 firsts, but I mean, shouldn't it be maybe even like 4 first-round picks plus?
Well, I think there's a
chance beyond that. I mean,
I think you may only be able to trade 3 first-round picks in the future. So that's where, if that is true, that's where the other players that are worth first-round picks come into the equation, such as a Bradley Chubb, a Cortland Sutton.
Or you're bringing another team into the trade and getting an extra first-round pick. You're making a 3-way deal where maybe a player is going to say the Dolphins, and the Dolphins are bringing in another first-round pick, and taking it up. That's how you'd have to get to this sort of trade. You may not be able to pull this off without having a third team involved.
And honestly, I mean, pulling it off is going to be extremely difficult, regardless of how this whole thing shakes out. And a lot of it is going to have to do with what Deshaun Watson wants. Because, as we know, he has a no-trade clause. He can veto any trade anywhere if he doesn't want to go there. The first team that has kind of emerged as a viable destination for him is Miami. Makes sense. Stars love Miami.
And Ryan, they've got to be the favorites in those most recent odds you saw, right?
They were not. The New York Jets were actually the favorite. And if you're thinking of what the Texans would want, that might make sense because they have more draft capital, especially this year where I believe they have 2 firsts, if I'm correct there. So that might make sense. But again, this is going to come down to where Deshaun Watson, I mean, he truly has all the power here. Now, the Texans could say, you don't want to play? That's fine. You can sit. It would be a vindictive, and they would only be hurting themselves. But if they don't want to get pushed around, by, you know, the quarterback of the team, they do hold that power. That's about the only card that they can play here. If Deshaun Watson, you know, starts vetoing trades.
But Ryan, it doesn't seem like they're going to go that route, because if there's already been internal conversations, then that means that they're thinking about it. They're talking about it now. Sure, Jack Easterby or the new general manager, Nick Caserio, could come in and say, absolutely not. I'm putting my foot down. We're not trading him. But we haven't heard that yet. And once these rumors start going, if you want to keep that franchise guy, that's when someone or the owner comes out and releases something publicly right away to say, we're not doing that. And that has not happened. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think if Deshaun Watson is on the Houston Texans, he is playing. I don't think there's going to be we're not trading him for anything, or else we would have heard that already.
Right, but like we've got Flyby Cygnus here in the comments saying, like, you can't trade anything on the offense. You have to make it as enticing as possible to bring Deshaun here. So that leads me to, like, can Deshaun Watson literally sit there and say, like, I'm down to go to the Broncos, but you guys aren't allowed to get Judy, Sutton, or Fant in the trade? Like, he can do that.
He could potentially, but also, guys, I think Deshaun Watson, the Broncos have so many weapons here. It's not like a DeAndre Hopkins situation where you only have one wide receiver that you really like on your team. And if you trade him, like, yeah, Cortland Sutton is fantastic, but if you have to put him in the deal, I think Deshaun Watson could see Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Noah Fant, 2 Pro Bowl running backs, and still be okay with that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you know, I'm looking at Broncos fans every day. They're proposing packages on Twitter for Deshaun Watson. It's almost never enough. A lot of them include Von Miller, which I have a hard time imagining the Texans want to take on Von Miller's contract. There's all sorts of different scenarios here that are being played out. But the main question I want to ask you guys is the headline of the show. Do the Broncos really have a chance at Deshaun Watson? Is that young offensive core enough for him to be enticed? Is Denver a place that he wants to play? Does does going from a recent expansion team or to a storied franchise, does that move the needle for him? Do you guys actually believe that this is at all possible?
Well, it depends what he really wants. Is it about the team around him right now? Is it about the supporting cast around him? Is it about the coaching staff, or is it about things like the city, the climate, etc.? I mean, it's possible that Denver could have the roster advantage compared with let's say Miami, New York. Okay, the Jets, obviously their advantage is to the Texans that. We talk about the 4 first-round picks. They could put together 4 first-round picks from just next 2 years' worth of drafts. No problem, because of that aforementioned Jamal Adams trade. So, but the Jets, they don't have the supporting cast at all. What the Jets do have is New York. And that's where it's like Deshaun Watson, if he succeeded in New York, obviously he would be the darling of the NFL in a way that might not happen in quite the same way anywhere else. So the other that's the thing. Deshaun Watson, is he thinking right now, supporting cast right now, or is he thinking bigger picture, 3, 5, 10 years down the line? The supporting cast can put around him and saying, okay, maybe I can't have as good a supporting cast, but I could be in New York, or man, being on South Beach just sounds heavenly. I would love to be down there. It's another state like Texas with no state income taxes, so I'd keep more of what I earn. These are all things that are in play. The Broncos, it's a better situation right now. Miami and the Jets might offer more of what he wants for the longer term.
I don't know if we can even say that the Broncos are a better situation than the Dolphins right now. Look what the Dolphins just did, guys. If we're being realistic, they went from being the Miami freaking Dolphins to building this great culture and almost making the playoffs just in 1 year under Brian Flores. So if we're talking about winning, I think Miami presents the better case. Now, are the weapons as good on offense? Probably not.
Not even close.
But you look at what they did on defense and what they're building there. So in terms of winning, I don't think it's fair to say that the 5-11 Broncos are a better spot right now for Deshaun Watson. But
Miami does not have the supporting cast on offense that Denver would. I mean, the perception would be that Watson would be I could probably take the guys in Denver and microwave them into 11-5 and 12-4 or 12-4 pretty quick.
Potentially. I just don't think an outsider would view the Broncos as being closer. No, I don't think they're so far away from that. But it also comes down to what could the Texans get in return? So do the Broncos have a chance at Deshaun? Yeah, I do believe they have a chance. And I believe that they're right behind those two other teams who are higher on the list than them in the Dolphins and the Jets. But if it comes down to Deshaun being okay with any of those teams, I think the package for the Texans would just be so much more enticing with the team that can offer a first-round quarterback this year, either the second or the third best quarterback. And also what we can't ignore here, guys, is what have we heard for the past 6 days since the Broncos hired George Paton as GM? Draft and develop, draft and develop, draft and develop. If you trade for Deshaun Watson, there's no drafting. Now, there can be developing because there's a lot of young guys on this roster, and developing around a 25-year-old quarterback, certainly, but there would be no drafting. So that's just where I put caution with the Broncos right now. If John Elway was still running this, I would say a little better chance because I think John would be willing to make that big-time move right now. With George Paton, I do caution that hurts the chances a bit.
Well, the other thing with Paton, the other thing with Paton is that it depends where they are in the draft and develop cycle. Because in Minnesota, remember, they traded a first and a fourth for Sam Bradford. But where they were was coming off 11-5, having won a division. They really thought when Teddy Bridgewater got hurt, if we can find somebody to plug and play, we can be in the Super Bowl. They were at that level because we've talked about how the array of possibilities are in play for the Broncos because Minnesota's done all these things, but they did all these things at different times. So in Minnesota, they made that audacious trade, but they were a mature team. Where does he see the Broncos being at right now? Does he see this team as close, or does he see this team as a ways off? There was a little item in Woody Page's column in the Colorado Springs Gazette over the weekend talking with an executive around the league who said, with Paton coming in, the Broncos may be taking one step backward to make 3 steps forward. So maybe Paton does not see the team as being that close.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to kind of see how Paton addresses this. I'll say this. If your GM strategy precludes you from trading for a 25-year-old franchise quarterback, it's a bad strategy. So He also did say, when there's things out there on the table, the Broncos will be interested and involved, but they won't something like, they'll be aggressive but not reckless.
So wait, Ryan, do you not agree with me that with John Elway as the general manager making the final decision that there'd be a better chance for this happening than with George Paton?
I think there's two ways of looking at it. I guess the one way would be if it's John Elway, he's looking to make a final splash. Looking to right the ship in the fastest way possible.
It's also a win-now move.
Right, that's what I mean.
If you're trading 3 first-round picks.
Right. But at the same time, a new GM has such a long leash to make a move like this where, you say, okay, I'm going to make this big-time splash move, and I have 6 years so I can trade 3 years of first-round picks because I'm going to be able to, I have the pieces right now. And then by the time that, the contracts come up for these young offensive starters, now I have my first-round picks back. So I think if you were setting the odds, you would probably say it's more likely if John Elway was the GM. But I don't think I think the new GM also can help the case in terms of the Broncos making this trade. And like I said, it seems like Vegas thinks that a new GM helps the case because the Broncos weren't even on the list when John Elway was the GM. So I'm with both of you in that there is a chance, but there's going to have to be some incredible breaks that go the Broncos' way in this whole thing. And it really comes down to, for me, the Broncos' offense, at least offensive weapons, The Broncos' offensive weapons are head and shoulders above the other teams on this list. And because of that, that's going to have to be your calling card. It has to be Deshaun Watson saying, like, I saw what it was like playing without DeAndre Hopkins last year, and I hated it. I don't want to throw to Chad Hansen anymore. I want to throw to Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant, and so on and so forth. That, honestly, is your best chance. Is he says, that's where I want to go. I want to go to the place that's stacked with weapons, because Miami has nothing for weapons, and neither do the Jets. Neither do I guess the Bears, who are in front of the Broncos, have Allen Robinson, who's a great receiver. They have I believe his name's Darnell Mooney, who proved himself to be a great deep threat this last year. So they're closer. But again, I think the Broncos certainly have the best weaponry for a quarterback like Deshaun Watson.
The problem with the Bears is they're in the worst cap shape of these teams that we're talking about, and they don't have a lot. They don't have really the obvious cuts like the Broncos. If they need, they would need to do some work. If the cap is $175 million, they would need to do some work, because they're right now on the hook officially for just over $174 million in contracts. So if it's $175 million, they're under the cap. And actually, in terms of cap space, over the cap has them 14th in the league right now in projected cap space. So they would have to make some moves. The Dolphins, they're in very good shape. If the cap is $175 million, they've already got 17 million of space. The Colts are in good shape. The Jets are in great shape. So that's why I would kind of cross off the Bears right away in this, is because I don't know if they could get his contract in. And the other thing that has to come into play is, if you're let's say you're the Jets and you can make this deal because you made the Jamal Adams trade. The way to get surrounding talent around Deshaun Watson is through the draft picks that you just traded, similar to the Miami Dolphins. They could put together 4 first-round picks, 2 this year, 1 next year, 1 the year after. But then all of a sudden, your best way to get those complimentary receivers is out. And what if Deshaun Watson says, like you just mentioned, I don't want to have this kind of situation anymore. I want the talent around me.
And that's exactly what the Broncos' selling point would be to Deshaun Watson with that no trade clause that he has. And what's interesting, guys, is I've just personally knocked the Bears off. I don't think that's an appealing place to go personally.
And as Kale just pointed out in the comments, Allen Robinson's a free agent and not happy with the Bears, which would make sense because he's much better than they've allowed him to be there. So
I was going to say, I think he'd be pretty happy and would stick around if they were able to get Deshaun Watson. I mean, that changes that situation there. But personally, I've kind of knocked the Bears off. So the big 2 giants to overtake are the Dolphins and the Jets, in my opinion. And what do all 3 of those teams have, including the Broncos? They have defensive head coaches. And it is Deshaun Watson looking for an offensive head coach. What type of coordinator is he looking for? Because Broncos got Pat Shurmur. Would the Jets, I mean, it seems like the Jets are already putting together the coaching staff. They already have their offensive coordinator, but that's something else to look at with the weapons. What offensive coordinator does he want to work with? Or does he say, hey, he talks with George Paton and says, hey, if I'm to waive my no trade clause for you in a year or right now, I want you to bring in this guy something. And of course, if you can get a 25-year-old quarterback in his prime, that's what you do.
Yeah, you'll bend over backwards. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating when I say I would tell Deshaun Watson, like, you can be in on every head coach interview next year. Like, and you can, like, we're going to value your opinion above anyone else's.
Well, that's what he wants at least to say in this Texans one. So I have to imagine that telling him he'd have a seat at the table would be a big selling point.
They'd be better off with him in that vice president position than Jack Easterby, based on what we're hearing, because Easterby seems to be the guy in that building that has a hypnotic hex over some people, and he's basically ruining the whole operation right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think all 3 of us here, everyone in the comment section, just about anyone would be doing a better job than Jack Easterby.
I mean, have you ever seen anything like this?
No.
One guy who so inexplicably has so much sway.
But it's got to be a friendship thing. Like, it's just his buddy, and he's, he wants to work with his buddy.
Well, and also, I mean, this just so reminds me of Josh McDaniels in Denver. And now it's a little different because Jack Easterby isn't the brand new guy there. But this is so much like it. A guy that just says, I want it my way. We're going to do it my way. And I don't care about who's here, who's not here. This is my team. And I don't care if you have a young quarterback. I'm doing it my way. And if he doesn't want to play ball with me this way, well, he can get out of here.
Yeah, it's idiotic.
If he's doing that, if he's trying to do it through song, is he trying to sing "My Way" by Frank Sinatra, or is he going a little more modern by saying "I want it that way"?
I think
says it over and over again until it sticks in Cal McNair's subconscious. Like, okay, you want it that way, we'll do it that way.
Did you see also he's got a burner account out there that he's defending himself with?
That's hilarious. And he keeps in the burner account insists it's not Jack Easterby, and some enterprising person went and found the email address associated with the account. And if that's the case, then it shows why Jack Easterby, another reason why he shouldn't be so involved in running a team, because if you're going to have a burner account, you set it up with some email address that nobody can figure out.
None of these people are smart enough for that. And it's not officially him, but the first two letters of the email address are EA.
Yes.
So again, and I don't think there's any Houston Texans fan out there who would, in their right mind, be defending him at this point.
And did you guys see that there's a march set up in Houston today to support Deshaun Watson and show the support for him staying there? And he actually just tweeted to the people organizing the march to cancel it because of COVID going on. You're right. No, not because he said I'm out of here no matter what, but maybe.
Damn. I mean, even the fact that he said cancel it, regardless of his reasoning, just not good for them.
No, what a time to be a Houston sports fan, man. That is brutal.
Yeah, this is essentially the Broncos don't really have a star, but so I'll leave the Broncos out of it. This is if in a 1 month span, Nathan McKinnon and Nikola Jokic were trying to force their way out of Denver.
This is the Denver almost had this situation. Now the timing wasn't as perfect, but with Carmelo leaving, that was a huge star kind of forcing his way out. And then also Jay Cutler, now a little different because he didn't necessarily force his way out, but Denver's the closest to this situation.
Yeah, and Jay Cutler might be the last young quarterback entering his prime who got traded away.
Yep. Yeah, and Deshaun Watson. Exactly. Deshaun Watson's way better.
Yeah.
And so what did the Broncos get for Jay Cutler? I mean, if we're talking about things that they would not represent what the deal would be, but starting points, Jay Cutler, a notch below Deshaun Watson, brought in 2 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and a mid-tier starting quarterback in Kyle Orton.
Yeah.
Kyle.
Well, and Drew Lock is probably a better trade chip than Kyle Orton was. In terms of age and tools.
In terms of tools, yes. In terms of, how old was Kyle Orton when he got traded? Because his first year in the league was 2005, so he probably
similar.
Kyle Orton was 26 when he got traded to Denver. Born in November of 1982. And the thing that the thing that Kyle Orton did have in his favor was that even though he was statistically unimpressive, he had, for those who are in the QB wins camp, he had taken the Bears to the playoffs, even though after guiding them to an NFC North title, they decided to start Rex Grossman in the playoff game. And then in 2008, the Bears had gone, I believe, 9-7 with him at the helm for all but one game that year. So,
yeah,
Kyle
I
Orton
guess
was
if you take
26.
Isn't that crazy? I
would have guessed
like
36.
I know. I remember thinking like, wow, we just traded the young quarterback for like this old guy.
Yeah.
I guess it's just the way he looked. And I guess also if you take hindsight out of the picture, Drew Lock pretty similar. Other than, just having a much bigger arm and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, Kyle Orton was a Heisman candidate when he was in college, and when
That's
that
all
trade happened,
mind-blowing.
when that trade happened, he was still young. Pretty interesting. Okay, couple of other things we got to touch on here quickly. Mace, you had mentioned that Woody Page column that came out, and within that Woody Page column, speaking of Drew Lock, or I guess this was on Twitter. I don't know. You can correct me on that. Mm-hmm. He mentioned that John Elway and Vic Fangio are both pushing for Drew Lock to get another year at quarterback.
Yeah, and in fact, he wrote multiple pieces, but like one paragraph that kind of jumps out here is where he writes, quote, Vic Fangio and Drew Lock definitely will return in 2021, but nothing is guaranteed beyond. But of course, doesn't say like in what capacity Drew Lock returns, which I think it's interesting that's not in there. It's not Drew Lock is going to be the starting quarterback. It's just that Drew Lock will return. So
and that's not a surprise.
That's not a surprise. But then in the same paragraph, right after, it says nothing is guaranteed beyond 21, and then says Peyton's agent also represents Northwestern coach Pat Fitzgerald, a popular choice as an NFL coach soon. So the question then becomes, if it doesn't work out, does George Paton already have ideas? Does he already have his list that he would turn to if there's a head coaching vacancy? And is Fitzgerald at the top of that list?
Boy, if it is Fitzgerald, the Broncos in back-to-back years would be getting one of the most sought-after prospects with the GM and the head coach that just have been super, super picky. So that's exciting if that's the case. That's for sure.
Yeah, Fitz has said, yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say Woody Page, the only person I know who just like breaks news in responses to people on Twitter.
Yeah.
Because here's the tweet that I was referencing.
Yeah.
He said, Peyton knew all about Locke coming out of college. I can tell you, frankly, he hasn't studied him since or after he took the Broncos job. He will be studying tape when he gets here full time. But Vic and John are pushing for Drew to get another year with a backup veteran free agent.
I got to say that not a surprise that John is pushing for that. But personally, I'm surprised that Vic is pushing for that, just the way that he's talked about not just Drew, but the offense and what he needed to see from the offense. And that was, of course, ball control. And like we talked about, Drew had 2 games where he didn't turn the ball over. That was week 1 and week 17. So I'm just a little surprised that Vic is pushing for that.
Well, it might be kind of the human thing that, okay, I've ridden with Drew Lock for a little over a year now, and maybe it's just simply like, hey, I think the kid can do a bit more in a better situation. But it's the GM that kind of has to have the less emotional eyes. And I don't know that John Elway, if he were involved with the decision, I don't know that he would have kind of the colder, unemotional perspective on it, because he did draft Drew Lock, but George Paton would so, and it's ultimately going to be his call. And so that's why having Paton is valuable. But how much does he listen to them, and how much, if George Paton doesn't like what he sees from the film, how much does he go with that?
Well, and guys, also one thing I was told this weekend about George Paton was don't be surprised in every aspect. If he kind of takes a step back this year, just see how things are going and doesn't make any huge changes. That's to his personnel staff. That's to the roster. And so that would lead to Drew Lock coming back for another year, and not necessarily, with everyone's full confidence. And I don't think that's a surprise to anyone just because of the way Drew's performed. But that could just be another reason why it's more of the same for next year. Let George, especially since he has that 6-year contract, see what he thinks of everything first person, and then make bigger moves to the coaching staff, to his personnel staff, and to the roster in 1 year from now.
Yep. So what kind of hedges that is that if he sits back and does status quo but just brings in a backup, what kind of hedge is it going to be? Is it going to be an older veteran? I mean, the Vikings did that when they had Travaris Jackson. Gus Frerotte was basically, as it turned out, 1 year from retirement at that point, going into year 15, and they brought him in. Or is it somebody, the year that Christian Ponder was going into his 3rd season, 2013, they brought in Matt Castle, who wasn't that far removed from taking the Chiefs to a division title. I mean, does he bring in somebody like that? And of course, when they brought in Case Keenum, who'd been a starter for the Rams half of the previous season, they had Bridgewater coming off injury. They had Sam Bradford with the questions about his knee. Peyton has always been a part of a team that did its best to have everything backstopped. I mean, really, until Kirk Cousins was the guy, the Vikings always try to kind of have somebody that they could turn to and trust, kind of the opposite of the Broncos, just having Jeff Driscoll in there. So what kind of backup, what kind of hedge is coming in here? I think that's the question that I wish we could answer right now. We can't.
Right. And honestly, if you take Deshaun Watson off of the table, you can make the argument that rolling with Drew Lock, the next year could be your best option. We don't know how the first-round quarterbacks are going to pan out, or even what caliber of first-round quarterback is going to be available at number 9. We don't even know if Matt Stafford or Matt Ryan will be available, like a lot of people have predicted or talked about over the last year. So that might be the best move for the Broncos. Last thing we got to touch on here in the first segment is, of course, the news that broke about Von Miller on Friday. Under investigation here in Colorado. We just don't know a lot of information. Zach, what exactly do we know at this point?
We know that Von Miller is under criminal investigation by the Parker police. And officially, that's all we know, guys. That's the only information that they want to release. Now, if they find that a crime was committed, then it will be we'll know what for, and it'll be sent to the DA's office. The investigation, I was told, guys, started recently. And we know that there's been those text messages that were leaked between him and his ex-fiance. A lot of people are drawing the connection that that's what it's about. But we don't even know if that's exactly what happened there. So this is something that, guys, it just puts more questions about Von's future out there.
Yeah, ahead, and the other thing, like, that's kind of in play, like those text messages, we don't know if that's what launched the investigation, but Fox 31 did report that it's an investigation into domestic violence. And one thing that came out on Friday was that the source of the text messages that were put out onto Instagram also said that, like, things are okay with Von and I. We're focused on, making sure it's a healthy environment for the baby, blah, blah, blah. So if that's
and
the case,
also she said that they're explicitly that Von had never,
right.
Again, that was so Von had never, put his hands on her, I guess is what
right. So
said, or something along those lines.
So then in that case, if she's not pushing for anything, it doesn't even become a he said, she said thing. At that point, it then becomes all about the text messages, and we may not have seen every single text message that was involved. And so the thing that could be in play is that if there's something in the text messages that we haven't seen, it could be something of a harassment charge, because the cops could get their hands on those very easily. All you have to do is call up Verizon or whoever and get all those messages subpoenaed. So it doesn't mean that Von Miller is out of the woods just yet. But right now, we're just all we're doing is speculating. And we don't really know what went on at this point. But it would seem like Von Miller on the surface is in a better place now than maybe he was, say, 4 days ago.
Yeah, and as you can hear, by the way, we're kind of tiptoeing around it. We just don't have enough information to, speculate on what it could mean for his future, speculate on what it could mean for his personal life. We just don't have a lot of information. So a ton of people watching on YouTube. We love you guys. If you'd hit us with a thumbs up, a subscribe, you could even sign up for alerts when we go live. We appreciate all of those things. For everyone who's listening on the podcast, we'll talk to you in a second. For those of you watching live, thanks for tuning in, and catch us anywhere you listen to podcasts for the second half of the show. Just search the DNVR Broncos Podcast.